Good evening and welcome to Coach World TV. I'm Terry Yoffe, and tonight as my guest, a very special guest actually, somebody I have known for quite a while and I respect and like, Beth-Ellen Keys. Hi,
Hello.
Beth-Ellen. How are
Hello,
you?
I'm great.
Good. Beth-Ellen is Managing Director of Causes First, which is a non-profit management and development consultancy. Did I say it right?
That's a mouthful. Yes, you did.
Oh, good.
Yes, you
Great.
did.
So, welcome.
Thank you.
And
Happy to be here.
oh, great. Tell us a little bit about what management and development consultancy company is.
What I do is I help startup nonprofits get on the road to developing their fundraising plans and their administration. This is not my clients are small.
Okay.
They're usually less than 2 or 3 years old, and they're just getting into feeling what it's like to really be a nonprofit, how they need board development,
Oh, boy.
they need outreach to other funders, grants. They also need a lot of help with administration, I help them kind of pull their act together in that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know that this was not where you got started in your
this
your
wasn't
career.
where I got
So
started.
how did you come to this path?
I started my career as what's called a conference producer.
Okay.
Meaning I work with associations or companies on specific topics and produced large-scale conferences, 4 or 5 tracks over 2 or 3 days with a couple of hundred speakers. And I did that for...
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's very detailed,
Right,
very
right,
specific,
yes.
detailed work. And I did it, I've done it since 1998. My company was called Speaker Space. And a lot of what I did, of course, was liaise with organizations and journalists and place speakers and write materials for conferences. But it's unfortunately a business that is very much at the effect of the economy. When the economy is down, people are not traveling, they're not going to events, and after 9/11, things were not very good. People didn't want to travel.
Especially to New York.
Especially to New
For
York.
a while, anyway.
So I filled in the spaces between having clients by doing a lot of volunteer work for women's associations, New York Women in Communications,
which
is
we're
how
all
we know each
yes,
other.
exactly.
New York Women's Agenda, which is another organization that I work with, AWNI, Advertising Women of New York, Step Up New York. And little by little I found that the work that I did for them was a bit more rewarding than the conference development work that I had been doing, and I decided to change the focus of Speaker Space and go more into nonprofit management and fundraising.
So I know that when you work with New York Women in Communications, you do their
I
matrix.
do their major event
Right.
of the year. It's the New York Women in Communications Matrix Awards. It's pretty much the biggest awards program for women in the communications field in New York.
And what would you classify that as? Is that a conference?
Lot of work.
Or yeah, right.
That I would
Is
classify that as an event, not a conference, an event.
Okay.
But that's an adjunct of being a conference developer, is that you do event work too. So
Okay.
rather than developing the content for something that has sessions and tracks,
Right.
I would basically be a live event producer for something like that.
Okay.
Everything that goes on the stage at the Matrix Awards is something that I have sway over.
Okay.
Who's on stage, how we pace the show, how we develop all the
Okay.
speeches. I do all of that as part of my volunteer work for New York Women in Communications.
And you also did the All-Star. Was that the one that I attended?
That's the New York Women's Agenda Star Breakfast.
Right.
I was the chair of that
Okay.
for 3 years, and not only did I have in that role, not only was I involved in the actual production of the event, but I also did all of the fundraising for the event.
So
and that's kind of how I
right,
got into the
right,
fundraising
right.
side of things.
So getting involved with these organizations and producing and helping to produce all these different events somehow guided you towards the non-for-profit?
It did. It did. The more I worked for these organizations, the deeper that I became entrenched with them, and I had board positions,
Okay.
either operating board or for New York Women in Communications, I'm on the foundation board, which is the part of the organization that deals with scholarships.
Okay.
So one of the things that the Matrix Awards does every year is it gives out more than $100,000 worth of
Right.
scholarships.
Okay.
So in doing that service, I fundraised quite a bit for the scholarship programs, and I realized that I felt that that was a better, not necessarily a better use of my talent, but an alternate use of my talent, which had an evergreen quality to it. There's always nonprofit organizations that need development assistance. There might not always be companies that want to produce events and conferences.
Right.
So I felt that this was an interesting way to go in the market. I was able to use my skills. I've networked for many, many years, and I have a nice Rolodex, and it's been working very nicely.
So I'm going to circle back a little bit, and one of the things you started to talk about was the whole volunteering process. And it was very interesting, and we talked about this over dinner, how keeping yourself busy. When the business you had some downsides to it.
It definitely had peaks and valleys.
Right, because of the economy, 9/11, and everything else that happened. Instead of perhaps doing nothing or bemoaning your fate, you talked about stepping up and volunteering. So talk about that a little bit, because that's very interesting.
There's only so many hours a day that as a job hunter you can sit at your computer and look for things. It starts to become debilitating, and you
frustrating,
start
I would imagine.
and,
Yes,
and it's draining. So what I started to do was work in volunteer capacities in these organizations, where I was able to use my skills as an event producer, as a conference producer, and I treated all of my projects just as you would treat a job. I had the same goals and deadlines, and for both of the big events that I managed, I had huge volunteer teams. So I was keeping my skills very fresh. I was keeping myself very occupied, and I was keeping myself out there in very public ways. So if somebody said to me, "What have you been doing?"
Right, exactly.
I didn't say, "Well, I don't have a job." I would always say, "I'm producing the New York Women in Communications Matrix Awards." And who would know that it's a volunteer job? I certainly didn't deal with it that way.
So, so let me try to reiterate a little bit that in these volunteer capacities, you were not getting paid.
I was not getting paid.
Right.
No, I was
but
not.
You were volunteering, keeping yourself busy, and keeping yourself in places where you were meeting many people that could lead to something.
And a lot of the people that I met in doing the Matrix Awards and the New York Women New York Women's Agenda Star Breakfast have actually become my nonprofit clients. I've done a great deal of networking, and because they've seen me in action in these events, they feel that they can trust me and trust my judgment. And it's been a very smooth transition to doing these kinds of things.
That's very interesting as we kind of segue into how do you keep yourself motivated when you are not fully employed and looking for a job. I love this whole volunteering perspective because, as you said, if you go out on a real interview, you're telling people, you know, the market is tough, which people know.
Absolutely.
And this is what I'm doing. I'm volunteering my time. Or this is what I'm producing and putting together and doing. So you don't have a gap on your
No.
resume.
No, in
Because you could
fact,
put that all down.
these things go on my resume
Oh, sure.
exactly in the order that I do them as if they were jobs. And if someone says to me, were you paid for this? Was this a job? Then I'll own up to the fact that it's a volunteer position, and it's part of my board service. So I'm on boards of both of these organizations, and this is I'm doing my commitment to the organization by doing this.
And do you also state possibly, and what it's doing is putting me in front of
Absolutely.
people that I can network with and meet, so that the job opportunities become greater for me.
You actually multiply your opportunities.
Okay.
Manyfold when you do something like this kind of volunteer
Sure,
work.
absolutely.
But you also have to think about it as doing something for yourself as well as doing something for the organization. I found that this in terms of keeping up morale, of keeping your skills fresh,
absolutely.
of being in front of people, of not getting shy or rusty. It's very important that you do these kinds of things.
It's great. I
Yeah.
mean, what about people that can't get into the door of a volunteer situation?
I don't think that there's anybody that can't get
Really?
into the door of a volunteer situation. I know, work for Advertising Women of New York. You've been a member for quite some time.
Other than having a full-time
Absolutely.
career, which is my coaching business, I do work with two organizations, AWNI, Advertising Women of New York. I chair their mentoring program, and I'm president of the International Coach Federation, the New York chapter.
Well, I've been what they call program chair of the Matrix Awards for 9 years now. I have a volunteer team of 40-plus women, and they're the same, not always the same, but a lot of them are the same women that have worked with me for 9 years. I don't turn anybody down. If they are a member in good standing of the organization and have some interest in working, there's always something that I can find for them to do on the Matrix Awards committee. Now, if we're talking about other kinds of skills like writing or digital skills, that's a different story. I think that you really need to have certain skills to be in volunteer positions, but they're great learning experiences.
Absolutely.
It's well worth the, a couple of $100 that you pay to join an organization like New York Women in Communications.
And what you're doing, other than volunteering, is you are, as you said, learning new skills. If you have to learn digital and you don't know digital, or brush up on your social media skills, so when an opportunity comes your way, that you already 3 steps ahead and have much more of a competitive edge than a lot of other people that haven't done anything.
Just recently, I got a call from an association that I've never had any experience with. They attended the Matrix Awards and asked who wrote the MC's speech, and I do that. And when they found out that it was me, they called me and asked me to script their whole award show. That's something that I never, because I'm not technically a writer.
Right.
But it's not work that I go out and solicit. But because they saw me live, they saw my work, it's very easy for me to do that now. So
wonderful. Being in our own business.
Yes.
Which is what both of us are.
Yeah.
I've been in my own businesses since '97.
Same time as me.
Yeah, I let go of working for a corporation, and there's a lot of security that comes with, as well as a paycheck. So
and bennies.
And what?
Bennies. Can't forget the benefits.
Oh,
we
of
really
course,
don't have
right?
That.
Exactly. So when you go off on your own, there's always the strengths and the challenges of being in your own business.
Absolutely.
And certainly there are many benefits of being in your own business, but one of the challenges we're talking about here is when clients aren't on the horizon. And what do you do? How do you fill the gap? And, you know, volunteering.
Volunteering is a great way to fill the gap. And another thing that I've learned is very often jobs can use your skills no matter what they're called. You may, one of my newest nonprofit clients, I saw a posting that they put up for what they called an administrative assistant. And, you know, I've got many years of experience. I'm not an administrative assistant. But in their job description, the tasks that they needed someone to do were not administrative tasks.
Really?
They were the tasks of a nonprofit executive director or manager. So I sent them a resume and spoke to them, and P.S., they're now a client. So I think you have to approach this from the point of view of how's your skill set match what you're being asked to do. I'm not fussy about titles, about I don't make any kind of judgments about that kind of thing. I'm starting a new phase of a business, and a client for me is as positive for me as it is for the client.
That's a great attitude, and one of the things that we talked about is when you are in your own business, it's about how do you brand yourself, or you know, rebrand, reposition, redefine who you are. If you did this 5 years ago, okay, and now you're doing management and development as a consultant for a non-for-profit, that must take a little bit of brand or rebranding.
Absolutely.
So expand on that a little bit.
Well, many
Beth-Ellen.
people knew me for many, many years as a conference and event producer. That's kind of how I made my bones. So even though I have many of the specific skills that management and development work, administration work for nonprofits need, one of the things that I did was decide that I was going to go back to school.
Right.
And I wasn't in a position to think about a master's program because I thought that was a little bit too much in terms of the financial burden. So I found a certificate program at New York University in fundraising and global philanthropy, and I've started to take courses in that. And as an additional sweetening, New York Women in Communications have given me a grant to continue my studies, which is fabulous. So it's kind of all of a piece.
I understand that, and we all have to periodically rebrand. I mean, I come out of advertising sales, and I left
Which
it.
Actually, I did too, very long ago.
Yeah, 97, I left to start a rep company, and then a couple of years later, I decided to follow coaching. So talk about repositioning, redefining who I was. I had to go back to school, I had to take courses, I had to learn. Now 9 years later, I've rebranded myself as a personal and professional development coach.
What you did was totally in sync with the needs of the times. I think that you saw that, and that's why you went into the coaching aspect of what you do, just like I moved over from the conference development portion of it to the nonprofit development portion of what I'm doing, because I see that that's a shift that's happening. And I also see, as women age into the marketplace, they need to do things that are going to be evergreen. There's always going to be a need for nonprofit management. And there may not, and given the advent of all kinds of digital technologies and streaming on the web, there might not always be a need for live conference and live event producers.
Absolutely. And I think now that you can do conferencing by video conferencing.
Absolutely.
So people, across the globe don't have to come together. They can get on a conference call, a video conference.
The perfect example of that is the TED conferences, which I did work a little bit with many years ago. TED conferences are very, very expensive to attend. They're $7,000 or $8,000 to attend. Now, if you pay a yearly fee of $1,000, you can see the whole TED conference streamed online. So that cuts out a lot of the work that I would do in something like that. So I saw that the writing was a bit on the wall about that.
It's interesting to kind of navigate the times,
yes,
and then parallel your own rebranding to what's happening. I actually fell into coaching. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I had a passion for being a therapist,
right.
and looked at that was going to be my next step, go back to school, become a therapist, and that just didn't work out. It was too much schooling for me. I decided to follow an alternate path, which was coaching. And this was 9 years ago. Today, coaching is a lot more popular, and known than it was 9 years ago or even 12 years ago. And last year, I expanded my horizons to do something called organizational relationship systems coaching, to include relationship and not therapy relationship coaching or couples coaching, but working with more business people on partnerships and how they can be on the same page, or even couples and how they can work together better. So I've added another tool to my toolkit. I also do mentoring. So that's another tool. I've been doing mentoring with Arnie for so long, as you know.
As I know, because I do mentoring with
exactly.
New York Women in Communications, and
we have
sucked all the information from you.
Oh, thank you. But that's just another tool that I have on my website that I do help people do mentor programs, and I also do mentor coaching with people that need to get additional accreditation by they need mentoring. So I have added, like you, different components and tools to my toolkit.
When I started out, which was when dinosaurs roamed the earth,
not really.
I started out as a stage manager. A legitimate stage manager for Broadway and off-Broadway.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. No.
I worked in the New York theater world. Now, when I decided that I didn't like the vicissitudes of shows opening and closing and being out of work, I took that talent and those skills into conference management, because that's just another piece of theater. It's just another way to look at it. So I was able to successfully rebrand my theater life as a conference development person. That's, and the first conferences that I did were basically entertainment industry conferences. I worked for Variety, the entertainment industry magazine.
Right.
So I did work in New York and in California. But I sort of kept that ball rolling and built on those skills, but I took it in a corporate direction.
Talking about going back in time, when I work with clients, what I talk about is their bankable nuggets.
That's a great phrase. I like that.
Thank you. Where you can look at from day one that you started working, you have these bankable nuggets that you put away. And they could be 20 years old, 5 years old, 100 years old, whatever they are. But along the way, whatever path and career you've had, you're collecting these nuggets, so that when you get to a point like I did or like you did, you can pull them out. Because I never thought, okay, sales and marketing, when am I going to use that in coaching? Well, coaching is a business, and you have to know sales and marketing. So they became available to me. But people forget that they've got these skill sets that they kind of tucked away and said, oh, well, will I ever use them again?
But you will, because many of the conferences that I've developed or produced, I've also developed the sales components that go along with them, selling sponsorships. It's not a big jump from selling sponsorships to fundraising for a nonprofit. It's
Right.
it's kind of all it's all
Right.
of
Right.
the cloth, the same cloth.
Interesting.
So yeah.
So all of what we're really talking about, the volunteering, the enhancing your skill set, keeping on top of things, the networking to being part of organizations, looking at the plus and, you know, the strengths and the challenges of either being in your own business or being out of work and how you deal with it, repositioning yourself, all really is about how to keep yourself motivated.
And how to keep yourself current also,
Right.
which is so important. Granted, New York Women in Communications is an organization, much like ANI, that's on
Right.
the forefront of everything that's
Right,
happening
exactly.
communications-wise. So if you're involved with that kind of an organization, you can't get fusty in your, I mean, your skills have to be up to par. You have to keep yourself current. You have to know about social media. You have to know about Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, all of these kinds of things. I know it's huge to think
Right.
about, but being involved with an organization like that has really kept my skills at a very marketable level.
And that's great. Do you have a website if anyone wants to go to it?
No, actually I don't. Speakerspace, my conference
Okay.
development company, did have a website, but I'm Causes First, which is the
Okay.
nonprofit development consultancy that I've started, is only 3 months old.
Okay.
So I'm sort
Okay.
of balancing my clients and also putting together my website
Okay,
now.
so
And
what
blog.
will it be? Causes
It'll
First?
be causesfirst.org.
Okay, causesfirst.org. If for any reason somebody wants to try and find you,
I'm on Facebook, Beth-Ellen Keys.
okay.
I'm on Twitter as Speakerspace. And
LinkedIn, I'm sure.
LinkedIn, definitely.
Okay.
LinkedIn,
So there's
definitely.
several different places.
I'm
So
everywhere.
yeah, right. So we have a couple of minutes left. What would you like to impart or say to our audience as kind of a wrap-up of really succinctly what we've been saying today?
I think what I would like to say to the audience is times, as we know, are not easy now. And instead of kind of bemoaning your fate if you've been excised from a job or downsized, the best thing that you can do for yourself is look around, see what you're interested in, and get involved in an organization. Meet new people, learn how to network, and join things. And don't just join and be a member that hangs back. Join a committee. Join a group. I think you'll find in the long run, it goes a long way to help both your skills and your mental attitude.
Well, this is really great. We have a couple of seconds, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
For everything you've imparted and the good advice you've given people. It's been really wonderful. And thank you for being here.
You're very
and
welcome.
I hope that good luck with Causes First.
Thank you
I think
very
that
much.
sounds very exciting. So thank you very much for being here, and
It was
thank
my
you.
pleasure.
Good night.